My name was Tariq Malik. I was a respected professor, a devout Muslim, and a man who thought he had life all figured out. My days were filled with lectures, prayers, and a relentless pursuit of knowledge. Knowledge that, ironically, left me with an aching void within. I was supposed to be a beacon of faith, yet the more I prayed, the less I felt connected to the divine. My heart was heavy with questions I dared not voice, fearing the wrath of a society that demanded unwavering loyalty. Then came the day when everything changed. The day Islamabad went silent. It was an ordinary morning until a sudden, inexplicable event sent me spiraling into unconsciousness. In that dark abyss, I found myself in the presence of a light so radiant, it pierced the fog of my doubt. Amidst the brilliance, I met Jesus. Not as the figure of a distant religion, but as a friend, someone who whispered truths I had never been brave enough to seek. He spoke of a spiritual war, one that lay hidden beneath the layers of conformity and fear that bound my soul. I saw how our world is orchestrated by unseen forces, manipulating faith and culture to maintain control over humanity. The revelation shattered my understanding, forcing me to confront the uncomfortable reality that my devotion was not towards God, but to a system designed to keep me shackled. When I awoke, I was not greeted with relief. Rather, I faced ostracism from my family and colleagues, marked as a heretic, stripped of my identity. The silence that once held me captive turned into a profound solitude, as guilt and fear clawed at my spirit. Yet deep inside, I felt a flicker of hope ignited by my experience. I was no longer just a professor. I was called to be a witness, a seeker of truth in a world shrouded in darkness. I began to explore my newfound faith in secret, knowing the risks it carried. As I uncovered the depths of Christianity, I discovered a community of ex-Muslims who shared similar journeys, each one of us grappling with the weight of our past, yet yearning for the freedom our spirits craved. My heart beat in rhythm with theirs, feeling simultaneously elated and terrified by the prospect of losing everything I once held dear. What lay ahead was a road fraught with uncertainty, but it was one I felt compelled to travel. I realized this was not just about me. It was a clarion call for many, a mission to illuminate the shadows of doubt that still haunt countless hearts. In sharing my testimony, I would unravel the threads of deception that bind souls, and show the beauty of a faith that promises not just salvation, but a deeper purpose. Before we delve into the depths of my awakening, I want to know, where are you watching from, and what time is it where you are? Leave a comment below. And if you, like me, are searching for truth amidst the chaos, subscribe to Truth from Beyond. For what I'm about to reveal isn't just my story, it's a pathway to transformation. The truth has a voice, and it's time we listen. In the heart of Islamabad, a traditional neighborhood where Islam dominated all aspects of life, I lived in a world that prioritized obedience above all else. My name is Tariq, and as a professor at a local university, my role was to instill knowledge and uphold the values of our faith. Each day, I walked the fine line between respect for tradition and my growing doubts. Fear of ostracism hung over my head like a dark cloud, stifling any voice that hinted at questioning the status quo. Yet, deep within, there was a spark, an urgent longing for truth that was becoming increasingly impossible to ignore. That fateful day began like any other. I was preparing for my lecture when an unexpected medical emergency hit. My heart gave out. In an instant, I found myself slipping away from this life, enveloped by darkness. It was as if I were parachuting into an abyss without a parachute, falling into the depths of nothingness. It was terrifying yet strangely liberating. As I descended, I felt a presence emerge from the shadows. It was Jesus, radiant and full of love. His gaze pierced through the veil of fear surrounding me, compelling me to confront the reality I had been avoiding. In that transcendent moment with Jesus, the floodgates of revelation opened. He spoke to me about the deception that permeated our lives, revealing how hidden agendas manipulated faith to control hearts and minds. The spiritual war we faced was not merely about personal belief, but a larger struggle against the elite, who sought to maintain their power by sowing division among us. I saw visions of conflict and suffering, war-torn regions, families torn apart by strife, and communities rendered powerless by misinformation. The weight of this understanding pressed upon me, sparking an urgency within my soul to awaken others to the truth I had uncovered. As I regained consciousness, the beauty of the world felt different. The colors seemed more vibrant, but the weight of my experience loomed large. I realized I could no longer walk the path of ignorance. The years spent adhering to blind obedience flashed before me, and I felt an overwhelming urge to share the revelations I had received. But the fear started creeping back in. What would my colleagues think? How would my family react? The very fabric of my existence felt at risk, and yet the drive to be a voice for the truth echoed in my heart. I understood that silence was no longer an option. The consequences of remaining passive would be far more damaging than confronting the discomfort of opposition. I began to connect with others who shared my feelings. In hushed meetings in dimly lit rooms, we exchanged stories of awakening, lit by the flame of courage that pushed us toward liberation. Each testimony was a reminder that we were not alone in this struggle. I recognized that Jesus had not just saved my soul in that moment of crisis. He had instigated a calling within me to become a beacon of hope for others, still trapped in the cycle of control and deception. The message of love and truth I received was powerful, and it felt almost like a weight on my shoulders, compelling me to carry it into the world, no matter the cost. Each shared story deepened my resolve, and as we opened up about the deception, the urgency intensified. I knew I had a mission to fulfill, and the time to act was now. My name is Tariq Malik. As a respected university professor in Islamabad, I've spent years shaping young minds, sharing knowledge with students who look up to me. I've been viewed as a beacon of academic excellence and a pillar of my community. But beneath the surface lies a profound struggle, a dissonance between my disciplined life, marked by daily rituals, and an internal turmoil fueled by a questioning faith. Each lecture I delivered felt like a performance, a rigid adherence to a script that no longer satisfied the deep yearning in my soul. Beneath the accolades and admiration, I felt emotionally trapped, suffocating under the weight of expectations. The moment that changed everything arrived without warning. It was an ordinary day when I stepped outside, succumbing to a sudden, life-altering incident. A heart attack thrust me into a void, a space where time ceased to exist, and I drifted into darkness. In that stillness, I was met with the luminous presence of Jesus. His voice, filled with compassion, cut through the silence, calling me to awaken from the slumber of complacency I had resigned myself to. I felt an overwhelming warmth, as if he were inviting me into a deeper understanding of the truth that had remained hidden from my view. In the embrace of his light, I experienced a revelation that shattered my perceptions. Jesus showed me the intricacies of political and social manipulation, exposing the hidden agenda of the elite, who perpetuated fear and division among people like myself. I witnessed how deception was woven into the very fabric of our lives, controlling our minds and hearts. The spiritual war we fight isn't just an abstract concept. It's a real conflict that plays out in every corner of society. I saw lives caught in the crossfire, families torn apart by the lies they believed, and the oppressive structures that enforced compliance. This awakening ignited something deep within me, forcing me to confront the very faith I had followed for so long. As I returned to consciousness, I felt an undeniable urgency compelling me to share what I had witnessed. I could no longer remain a complacent observer, hidden in the shadows of doubt and fear. My life had been one of adherence to ritual over truth, yet now I held a profound responsibility to awaken others to the realities I had come to understand. My students, my peers, my community, They all deserved to know about the deception that had kept us captive. Yet, in the depths of my heart, I wrestled with fear. Fear of losing my career, my reputation, and the familiar world I had constructed around myself. Despite this fear, the call to action surged within me. Sharing the truth was my new mission, fueled by the revelations I had experienced. I reached out to those who were also seeking, forming connections with individuals who had faced similar struggles. In hushed conversations, we exchanged stories of awakening, revealing how deeply the manipulation of belief had affected our lives. Each encounter with fellow seekers filled me with hope and resolve. I knew that breaking the silence and challenging the status quo was crucial. The truth could not remain hidden any longer. It was time for the awakening I had experienced to resonate throughout the community, to cut through the deception that had ruled for too long. The path ahead was uncertain, but I was no longer afraid to walk it. During my daily prayers, I often found myself grappling with a profound sense of emptiness. My name is Tariq Malik, and as a professor in Islamabad, I was respected for my knowledge and my dedication to my faith. Yet in the quiet moments of reflection, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was fundamentally amiss. I recited the words I had memorized, but each prayer seemed to echo back at me with chilling silence. It was as if the connection I once felt with my Creator had faded into a distant memory, replaced by a haunting sense of disconnection. Lying awake at night, distant dreams began to blur my reality and intensify my unease. These dreams were often unsettling, filled with shadows and whispers of doubt that clawed at the edges of my consciousness. I started to question the very foundations of my belief. Was my faith truly about enlightenment, or was it more about control? The teachings I held dear felt increasingly like a tether, binding me to a rigid structure rather than providing the liberating connection I sought. As I navigated through the labyrinth of my mind, I couldn't help but suspect that perhaps the essence of my spirituality had been distorted by a hidden agenda. I was wrestling with a sense of betrayal that left me feeling lost and isolated. The tension grew with each passing day as I struggled to align my internal conflict with external expectations. My colleagues and students admired my dedication, yet the weight of their expectations pressed down on me. If only they knew the turmoil brewing beneath my composed surface, the unanswered questions nagging at my heart. I yearned for someone to understand, to voice the doubts I dared not share for fear of dismissal or rejection. Amidst the oppressive atmosphere of conformity, I felt as though I was on the brink of an awakening, yet still tethered to the safety of my familiar life. The idea of speaking out terrified me, but within that fear also resided a glimmer of hope. During one particularly desperate moment of prayer, I found myself pleading for guidance. In that sacred space, an unexpected presence enveloped me. The unmistakable voice of Jesus broke through the chaos of my thoughts. "Awaken," he said, calling me to see beyond the confines of my understanding. His words resonated deep within me, igniting a spark of realization that began to unravel the deception I had been wrestling with. As I listened, Jesus revealed the hidden truths about the spiritual war that waged not just within myself, but in society at large. I understood then how the elite manipulated fear and division, using religion as a tool to control the masses. What I experienced was not just a revelation. It was an awakening that shattered the chains that bound my spirit. In that moment, I felt liberated. A burden lifted as I recognized the urgent need to speak the truth I had discovered. I imagined gathering others, shedding light on the darkness that had clouded our understanding for so long. The realities of the world, conflict, division, societal unrest, were laid bare before me, and I understood that this awakening was not solely personal. It was a clarion call to action. I realized that if I continued to suppress this truth, I would remain trapped in a cycle of fear and silence. The shadows of my doubts began to recede, replaced by a burning desire to break free and help others do the same. The path ahead was uncertain. fraught with challenges. But it was one I felt compelled to follow. After a sudden fall in my office, I slipped into a coma, entering a liminal state unlike anything I had ever experienced. My name is Tariq, and as a professor in Islamabad, I had dedicated my life to education and adherence to my faith. My days were filled with lectures and rituals. But beneath this facade of normalcy lay a deep-seated unease, a longing for something more profound than the traditions I had followed. The moment I fell, I found myself in a realm between life and death, a space where time seemed to lose all meaning, and all I felt was a heavy silence. In that silence, a light appeared, warm and inviting, gradually dispelling the darkness that surrounded me. I could feel the presence of Jesus drawing closer, his light transforming the shadows of my doubt into clarity. "Awaken," he said, his voice gentle yet commanding, cutting through the layers of deception that had clouded my vision for so long. In that instant, I felt like a child again, washed clean of my fears and uncertainties. As I stood in the radiant glow, I was enveloped by a sense of peace that transcended any understanding I had known, though it was tinged with urgency. Jesus began to reveal truths that shook the very foundation of my beliefs. He showed me how the religious and cultural systems I had embraced were often distractions, designed to keep individuals from experiencing the divine truth. The revelation unfolded like a scroll before me, illuminating the hidden agendas of the elite who manipulated our fears to maintain control and power. I saw the relentless spiritual war being waged, not just within individual hearts but across nations. The visions were intense, depicting conflicts fueled by religious zealotry and societal divisions that broke families apart, an awakening to the manipulation that had perpetuated suffering for generations. Amid these revelations, I realized that my own life had been marked by a struggle against the chains of dogma. The rigid practices I had adhered to now appeared as barriers, blocking the path to authentic spiritual fulfillment. The emotional tension I had felt during my waking hours was now blissfully replaced with the understanding that I was meant for more than compliance and expectation. I could sense the urgency of my mission, to spread the truth I had discovered, to help others break free from the deceptions that bound them. Each moment in Jesus' presence felt like a clarion call, urging me to rise from my slumber and engage in the fight for spiritual awakening. As the visions intensified, I felt the walls of my previous existence breaking down. The complacency I had once accepted was replaced by an undeniable desire to awaken not just myself but others who remained ensnared in the cycle of despair and ignorance. I was overwhelmed by the thought of stepping into the light of truth, to guide those who were still stumbling in darkness. I could almost hear the cries for help, the longing for liberation echoing in the air around me. In that moment, the mission became clear. I was to return to the world and become a messenger of enlightenment, casting aside the fears and doubts that had once held me captive. And then, just as sudden as it started, the light began to fade. I felt the pull of my physical body drawing me back, the urgency of my awakening leaving an indelible mark on my soul. I knew I was being sent back to fulfill a purpose, and as I slipped away from that radiant presence, my heart raced at the thought of what lay ahead. I had witnessed the truth, the very essence of my purpose, and now I was ready to embrace the challenges that awaited me. The journey of awakening was only beginning, and as I returned to consciousness, I realized that I could no longer hide behind the safety of my old life. The spiritual war had just begun, and I was determined to fight for the truth that had set me free. Upon waking from my coma, the world blurred back into focus, but the harshness of reality hit me like a wave. My name is Tariq, and I had spent years dedicated to my work as a professor in Islamabad. The accolades and respect I garnered from my students now felt meaningless amid the painful knowledge of what I had come to understand. I was thrust into a reality where my family and peers labeled me a heretic, ostracizing me for the path I had chosen. The weight of their judgments suffocated me, filling my heart with a profound sense of guilt and fear. I was now a pariah in the very community that had once embraced me. The loneliness that accompanied this newfound existence was a heavy burden. I longed for connection but felt the chasm widen with every whispered accusation behind closed doors. I watched as friends turned into strangers, their eyes filled with mistrust and disdain. The family that had raised me now viewed me as an enemy, someone who threatened their very way of life. This fear of abandonment gnawed at my core. But deep within, I felt an insistent yearning to explore the new faith Jesus had revealed to me. The truth encompassed in his words felt like a beacon in the darkness, guiding me toward a reality that lay beyond the shadows of deception. Yet, with every step forward into this uncharted territory, I confronted the ghost of my past. Memories of rituals and prayers haunted me, reminders of a faith that had once given me solace but now felt suffocating. I wrestled with the conflict between my commitment to an awakening spirit and the anguish that surfaced with the realization of what I had lost. The spiritual war that raged inside me mirrored the chaos I saw unfolding in the world around me. Wars fueled by religious zeal, leaders exploiting divisions, and the elite manipulating narratives to maintain control over the masses. As I navigated these tumultuous emotions, I began to seek others who shared my struggle. I found pockets of community where individuals bravely explored their own journeys of faith and awakening. Connecting with these new friends provided a glimmer of hope amid the isolation. In our discussions, we shared not only our fears but also the strength we drew from Jesus' revelations. Together, we began to dismantle the hidden agendas that sought to keep us in check. I realized I was not alone in this fight for enlightenment, nor was my experience unique. Many voices echoed the same truths we had discovered: hidden agendas, spiritual deception, and the urgent need for awakening. With each meeting, the whispers of doubt that once kept me caged began to dissipate. I felt empowered to share my testimony boldly, to proclaim the truth that had been revealed to me during my near-death experience. The stakes, however, remained high. The fear of further ostracization loomed large, and the thought of losing everything I once held dear cast a long shadow over my newfound convictions. Yet, deep within, I recognized that this awakening had ignited a passion I could not ignore. It was a call to action, not just for me, but for all those still trapped in the cycle of spiritual bondage. As I prepared to speak out against the deception and the manipulation that clouded our understanding, I felt a surge of determination coursing through my veins. The fear of losing my career paled in comparison to the importance of sharing the truth. I could no longer remain silent while others suffered in confusion and despair. It was time to awaken those around me and shine a light on the hidden agendas that threatened to extinguish the spirit of love and unity we desperately needed. My journey had just begun, and with every word spoken, I aimed to reclaim not just my life, but the lives of many others yearning for liberation. In secrecy, I began to embark on a journey that felt both exhilarating and terrifying. My name is Tariq, and I found myself increasingly drawn to the teachings of Christianity. The weight of my doubts and the spiritual war within me had pushed me to investigate the very faith I had been taught to reject. Under the cover of night, I watched videos and read biblical texts, each word resonating with a truth I had long sought but never fully understood. The more I delved into this new world, the more my heart began to respond, yet I was acutely aware of the risk I was taking. The fear of being discovered gnawed at my insides, casting a shadow over my exploration. As I explored these teachings, I stumbled upon a small support group of ex-Muslims who had traveled similar paths. Their stories mirrored my own, tales of questioning, of awakening to truths hidden beneath layers of cultural and religious deception. In their company, I felt a strange sense of peace wash over me, a warmth that I had not experienced in years. Yet, alongside that peace lurked a suffocating fear of consequences. I feared losing my family, my culture, perhaps even my very identity. Each prayer I whispered to Jesus felt sincere, yet I couldn't shake the feeling that I was stepping into a darkness from which there might be no return. The hours spent in prayer began to transform my understanding of God. I would close my eyes and invite Jesus into my heart, and with each moment, I felt the chains binding me to my former beliefs start to dissolve. I felt his presence as a gentle light, illuminating the shadows of doubt and fear that had kept me paralyzed for so long. As I lay there, I realized this was not just an exploration of faith, it was an awakening, a call to uncover the truth that had been obscured by years of dogma. I sensed the urgent need to act, to reclaim my spirit from the confines of belief that had become mere obligation. It wasn't long before the moment arrived that would mark my spiritual rebirth. In a small, secluded gathering, surrounded by a few trusted individuals, I underwent my baptism. Immersed in the water, I felt the weight of my past lift from my shoulders. The guilt, the fear, the shame. Emerging from the water, I realized I was stepping into a new life, one suffused with hope and the promise of newfound truth. The moment felt electric, as if the very heavens opened to welcome me into a community that embraced love, acceptance, and spiritual freedom. I had crossed a threshold, yet the backlash I anticipated from my family and community loomed large in my mind. With my awakening came the realization that I could no longer live in the shadows, nor could I allow fear to dictate my journey. I understood that the truth I now possessed was too powerful to keep hidden, and I felt compelled to share it, to shine a light on the hidden agenda aimed at controlling us through deception. As I continued to nurture my new faith, I could feel the urgency to speak out grow stronger within me. I believed there were countless others still bound by fear, struggling with the very questions I had faced. My experience became a campaign for awakening, a declaration against the forces that sought to suppress our understanding and keep us in confusion. The tension in my heart was palpable as I grappled with the potential fallout of my revelations. I feared the rejection that awaited me, yet I also felt a profound sense of responsibility. Standing at this crossroads, I knew that the path ahead was fraught with challenges. But with each revelation came the courage to push forward. I was determined to share the truth about the spiritual war that raged on in silence, a battle for the souls of those still trapped in the darkness. As my heart surged with conviction, I prepared to step into the light fully, ready to confront the deception and ignite the flames of awakening in the hearts of others. The journey was only just beginning, and I was ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. Through my encounters in the depths of despair, I began to realize that my revelation was not just a personal awakening, it was a calling to alert others to the truth. My name is Tariq, and as a professor in Islamabad, I had lived a life filled with the expectations of my community and the weight of tradition. But after my near-death experience, when I met Jesus and witnessed the hidden agendas of the elite, my perspective shifted dramatically. It became clear that the spiritual war we all face is not just internal, it's a battlefield that encompasses society itself. This awareness became a fire within me, urging me to break my silence and confront the realities I had once accepted without question. The moment I encountered Jesus while suspended between life and death was a turning point. He illuminated the darkness surrounding me, revealing profound truths about the deception woven into the very fabric of our lives. I saw how religion, often a source of comfort, could also be manipulated to serve a hidden agenda, one that favored those in power while keeping the rest of us in fear and ignorance. This revelation echoed through the chambers of my heart, overwhelming me with its urgency. The conflict I witnessed during that encounter wasn't merely mine. It was societal, a reflection of the struggles faced by countless others who were still entangled in the illusion of control. After waking from the coma, the reality of my situation bore down upon me. I was no longer the same man who walked into that hospital. I carried the weight of revelations that demanded an expression, a sharing of the truth I had come to know. The thought of losing my career, my status, and the respect of my peers clawed at my insides. Yet, the fear of remaining silent felt far heavier. How could I continue to teach my students, to guide them, while knowing that the very systems I had once upheld were riddled with lies? This internal battle echoed the larger spiritual war playing out in our world. a battle for truth against the deception that perpetuates conflict and division. I began to seek out places where I could gather with others who were also awakening to these truths. I connected with a group of individuals who had once walked the path I had known and were now embracing new beliefs unshackled from oppressive traditions. Sharing our stories of struggle and awakening became a powerful source of encouragement for me. Their courage to break free inspired me to do the same, to step into the light boldly and share my own journey. Together, we committed to spreading our stories, recognizing that in doing so, we could challenge the narratives that upheld the false sense of security we were so easily ensnared in. As I prepared to share my truth, I felt a mix of trepidation and exhilaration. I understood that breaking my silence would come with a cost, facing the backlash from family and community. But the conviction to speak out burned brighter than my fears. I had witnessed firsthand the consequences of inaction, and I couldn't stand idly by while others continued to suffer under the weight of deception. With every step I took toward my new mission, I felt the spiritual war intensifying, not just within me, but around me, in the cries of those still caught in darkness. I was determined to be a voice for the voiceless, to shed light on the hidden agendas that sought to maintain control. As I stood on the precipice of this new journey, I was ready to confront whatever obstacles lay ahead, propelled by the truth that had transformed my life. I made the bold decision to leave it all behind: my home, my family, the life I had known. It wasn't an easy choice, but the oppressive weight of my former reality had become unbearable. My name is Tariq, and I was once a respected professor in Islamabad, grappling with the heavy expectations of my community and the suffocating grip of my past. After my awakening through Jesus, I understood that staying would only continue to suffocate my spirit. I had witnessed the hidden agendas at play, the manipulation that perpetuated the spiritual war, and I could no longer live a lie. As I relocated to a new town, far from the eyes of those who once watched my every move, I felt a mixture of fear and liberation. The pain of leaving my family behind cut deep, knowing they would never understand my choices. But the prospect of living without the constant threat of persecution brought me a profound sense of purpose. I found a small community of believers, people who had also felt the tug of truth pulling them away from their pasts. Here, in this new environment, I could breathe again. Each moment felt like a step toward reclaiming my life and identity, to walk openly in the light of the truth I had discovered. In this new chapter, I began to share my story. Speaking to others about my encounter with Jesus was both exhilarating and terrifying. I recounted how he revealed the truths of our world, the layers of deception spun by the elite, the spiritual warfare that kept us all in a state of confusion and fear. I spoke about the awakening I had experienced and how it transformed my understanding of faith and spirituality. The more I shared, the more I felt the urgency of my mission. Each testimony I encountered reinforced that message. Countless souls were still trapped, yearning for liberation from the binds of their previous beliefs. With every person I reached, I felt the simmering tension of the spiritual war surfacing. The more I unveiled the manipulation at play, the political agendas veiled behind religious dogma, the societal divisions that kept us fighting amongst ourselves, the clearer the picture became. Many listeners resonated with my message, their eyes lighting up with the flicker of awakening. They too had felt that nagging emptiness, that sense of betrayal by the institutions they once trusted. I knew then that my purpose was not just my own revival, but to spark a movement, a collective awakening that would transcend borders and beliefs. Yet as I relayed these truths, the weight of potential consequences loomed heavily over me. I realized that breaking my silence came with immense risks. The fear of backlash was a constant companion, reminding me of everything I had lost. But with that fear came a newfound courage, a determination to continue sharing the message of Jesus and exposing the truths that so many had overlooked. I felt like a candle in the darkness, illuminating the way for others who saw beyond the deception. My journey was unfolding in ways I had never imagined, and with every step I took toward the truth, I became more convinced that I was meant for this mission, to awaken, to reveal, and to help others traverse their paths towards spiritual liberation. The call to action was undeniable, and I was ready to embrace it wholeheartedly. Years have passed since I made the decision to leave everything behind, yet I still carry the memories of my past like shadows in the back of my mind. My name is Tariq, and now I reside in a new community, far removed from the constraints of my previous life in Islamabad. After my awakening through Jesus, I dedicated my life to helping others find the freedom I discovered in faith. It hasn't been easy. The scars of my past still linger, but every day I find purpose in sharing my testimony, offering hope to those still ensnared by doubt and fear. In this new environment, I connected with a diverse range of individuals, each grappling with their own spiritual battles. As I shared my journey, from the oppressive weight of cultural expectations to the enlightening moments I experienced with Jesus, I saw the flicker of recognition in their eyes. My words resonated with many, creating an unspoken bond between us. We were all seekers on similar paths, each yearning for liberation from the spiritual war that rages within and around us. The revelations I had encountered were not just my own. They were universal truths waiting to be shared and embraced. Yet, even as I found my place among this new community, the hope for reconciliation with my family loomed large in my thoughts. I wondered if they would ever understand the choices I made. The love I had for them hadn't diminished, but the distance felt insurmountable. I deeply longed for an opportunity to bridge the gap, to share the truth of my transformation with those who had once held me so closely. The pain of estrangement was a constant reminder of the price I had paid for my awakening, and I held on to the hope that one day, the walls built by misunderstanding would come crashing down. The stories I heard from others amplified my commitment to this mission. Each personal account echoed the sentiments of deception that the elite had perpetuated for too long. The fear that so many felt, a fear of judgment, a fear of losing one's place in society, only fueled my resolve. I understood intimately how the manipulation of belief could foster division and insecurity. Our meetings became a sanctuary, a place where we could freely express our doubts and bask in the light of understanding and support. The urgency to confront the hidden agenda behind the fear intensified, driving us to stand against the forces that sought to keep us in spiritual bondage. As I continued to engage with my new community, I felt an overwhelming energy building within me, urging me to extend my outreach beyond our small gatherings. I envisioned larger groups, open discussions that would break down barriers and encourage others to seek their truth. The awakening I had experienced was too precious to keep confined. I had become not just a witness to revelations, but a messenger of hope and transformation. With each step forward, I could see a future where the tide of deception could be turned, where more souls could be liberated from the darkness. But I knew that the road ahead would be fraught with challenges, and the stakes could not be higher. Embracing this truth meant risking everything. But if there was one thing Jesus had taught me, it was that the light we seek is always worth the journey, no matter how daunting the path may be. The central moral message of my journey is clear. Religion can imprison the heart, but truth liberates the soul. My name is Tariq, and I once lived a life tightly bound by my faith in Islam, respected as a professor in Islamabad. Each day was filled with the rituals I had been taught, but deep within, I sensed a growing emptiness. It wasn't until I faced a life-altering experience that my perception of faith and truth transformed completely. I had long felt like a prisoner of my own beliefs, but an unforeseen event opened my eyes to a reality that would compel me to seek the truth beyond societal expectations. After a near-fatal accident left me in a coma, I encountered Jesus in a realm untouched by the fear of judgment. It was a moment of profound revelation. Jesus illuminated the darkness surrounding my doubts, whispering truths that cut through the fabric of lies I had believed for so long. I understood for the first time how the manipulation of belief, especially by the elite, had created a powerful deception that kept me and my community shackled. He showed me how religious institutions, in their quest for control, often obscure the very God they claim to serve. This experience ignited a fire in me, urging me to break free from the chains of conformity. When I awoke, the world felt different. Gone was the indifference I once felt towards the struggles around me. I began to see the spiritual war for what it truly was, a concerted effort to keep the masses divided and fearful. The revelation of this hidden agenda filled my heart with urgency. I could not remain silent, unable to ignore the call to awaken myself and others to the truth. I sought knowledge, diving into the teachings of Jesus and biblical texts that resonated with my newfound understanding. The walls that once confined me started to crumble, revealing a path towards liberation. Yet, with every new insight came fear. Fear of backlash, fear of rejection from my family, and fear of losing my identity. While I yearned to express the truths I had discovered, I was acutely aware of the potential consequences. The tension between my desire to share these revelations and the threat of ostracism from my community created a tumultuous storm within. I knew that awakening was not merely a personal journey, it was an act of defiance against the very structures that sought to stifle the search for truth. I was prepared to risk everything, fueled by the conviction that many still lived in the shadows of deception. As I began to connect with others on similar journeys, I grasped the depth of our collective struggle. We shared stories of awakening, each testimonial reinforcing the idea that transformation is indeed possible, even amid suffering. Together, we witnessed the struggles of those still trapped by the hidden agendas of our society, the manipulation that spurred division and fear. This burgeoning community became a sanctuary, a place of understanding where we could embrace our vulnerabilities and confront the injustices surrounding us. The spiritual war may be complex, but our resolve to stand united in pursuit of the truth became clearer than ever. I dedicated myself to sharing my story in hopes of igniting transformation in others, believing wholeheartedly that through faith, we could find the freedom we were all desperately seeking. And I knew that the journey had only just begun. Now that you've journeyed through my story, I must leave you with a thought that lingers like a whisper in the darkness. Do you ever wonder if there's an unseen force at play in our lives, guiding, controlling, even manipulating our paths? I've felt it firsthand, a force that cloaks the truth and perpetuates division among us. My encounter with Jesus ushered me into a realm of awareness that is difficult to describe, but it ignited an urgent fire in my soul, pushing me to illuminate the shadows that have blinded so many. What's happening in the world around us transcends mere coincidence. We are engaged in a spiritual war, a deep struggle for truth against deception. It became clear to me that the lies that kept me shackled for so long are woven throughout our societies. So I encourage you, dear viewer, have you ever felt the weight of doubt pressing upon your heart? Share your moments of awakening or struggle with us in the comments below. Your experiences matter in this fight for understanding, and I want to hear from you. If this message resonated with you, do not leave without subscribing to Truth from Beyond and turning on the notification bell. Your subscriptions create a powerful community united in the quest for truth, each voice amplifying the urgent call for awakening. With each new video, we will explore deeper truths that challenge the status quo, but only if you join us on this journey. In our next video, we will dive even further into a testimony that reveals the intricate ways the spiritual war influences our daily lives. I'm Tariq Malik, and I'm grateful you chose to share this moment with me. Remember, the light of truth can break through any darkness. Be courageous, stay curious, and keep seeking. Until next time.